These principles can be adopted as a full and sufficient set as is, or they may be adapted to existing organizational values and principles. What that means is these principles need not be always copy pasted into an organization, but that also means that organizations should have some guiding principles of their own if they don't apply or use the ITIL ones. In fact, we have something known as the ITIL Maturity Model Assessment. You might be familiar with it, where the ITIL value system is assessed for its maturity. And there, when the assessment is done, then the evidence is not asked for complying with the ITIL guiding principles, but it is only asked whether the organization has some guiding principles at least. And their principles should mainly apply to the changing context or environment that the organization operates in, and should align to their or support their vision, the purpose of existence, and their culture. And these principles are aligned and compatible with principles offered by other areas, related areas such as Agile, DevOps, and other bodies of knowledge on digital product and service management. For example, you might know that in Agile, it is iterative way of working, and therefore we have a principle, progress iteratively with feedback. But that's not the only one which relates to Agile. In DevOps, we have a culture of collaboration between Dev and Ops. Therefore, we have the principle here, collaborate and promote visibility. And maybe some others also apply. So these guiding principles are designed to guide organizations' management and use of digital technology, but they can be applied to all types of organization, industries, and activities. So let us get into these different guiding principles of ITIL. The first one is focus on value. It is an important one. That's why we have it as the first one. There is no specific sequence or ordering of the principles, but mainly focus on value does apply as the top principle, because ITIL is about co-creating value. What is this principle about? All activities conducted by the organization should link back directly or indirectly to value for the organization itself, its customers, and other stakeholders. Now you see a note at the bottom right in the yellow sort of background. And what that tells us is, though each of the 7 principles have been described in detail in this course, only the highlighted principle statement of each one and its application is included in the exam syllabus. So this highlighted statement in sort of blue color, and then later on we will see the application of this principle. So only these 2 things are in exam syllabus for each of the 7 principles. But then you see a lot more text below here, and also you will find maybe 1 or 2 more slides coming up for each of these principles, but those are only for a better understanding rather than the exam syllabus. And these are also taken from the official ITIL Foundation version 5 book, though not copy pasted as is. Now, what is value? Value, you might have noted in another recording, it is something of importance to a stakeholder, which is perceived as important. And we also have service value and what the service creates. So there are many examples of value: revenue, customer loyalty, lower cost, growth opportunities, ability to pursue new markets, higher productivity, reduce negative impact, better competitive position. You can even add others such as innovation, etc. And who defines the value for service consumers? There may be a mistake sometimes that the provider is defining value for the service consumer. The provider can always propose the value, but it is a consumer who defines what they want as value. And value, we have noted in another topic, another recording, that it is composed of or comprised of outcomes and the costs and risks associated with it. So value for the consumer is achieved through support of the outcomes and optimization of the service consumer's costs and risks by the service provider. Value is subjective, influenced by service experience, because it may be difficult to measure value. There can be certain metrics or key performance indicators for value, and you can call them value indicators. But finally, it's in the mind of people, the value concept. So it has to be probed through questioning, through feedback, rather than always concluded with a score or a rating. And value changes over time and in different circumstances. A user of a application might want new functionalities after some time. And if the same is provided for years and years, then they might feel that it is no longer valuable to them to perform their business or personal work. Then some more ideas regarding focus on value. Regarding who is the service consumer? By the way, service consumer are made up of the customer, users, and the sponsor from the consumer organization. These are all stakeholders, and you might recollect the principle includes the word stakeholder, creating value for stakeholders. Now, customer, of course, is a key stakeholder or a number one stakeholder who has signed the agreement, who has defined the requirements in the agreement, and who is responsible for the outcomes of service consumption with support from the service provider. But then there are also employees, society, regulators, government, suppliers, and there may be others also. So the first step for this who is the service consumer question is when focusing on value, it is important to know who is being served, who is the consumer, and who or what are the key stakeholders, customers, users, and sponsors, as I just mentioned. And when we come to the digital product and service life cycle, we had that separate section and recording earlier. You would recollect there was a discover activity that was the first in the value chain set of activities, and which are also related to the digital product and service life cycle. So this is identified in the discover activity at the organizational portfolio and product levels as to who the service consumer is. Next, the organization has to understand what is truly the of value to the service consumer. Meaning, why do they use the services? How does it help them, particularly to achieve their goals? And how do they feel when they achieve the services? What is the role of the cost or financial consequences for service consumer? Risks involved for service consumer. A consumer could be an individual, a single person, who is not only the customer specifying the requirements, but also the user of the service and also paying for it. For example, a user of a Netflix video streaming service. Now let us take a look at applying this principle. So for the syllabus, you must know the principle statement, which we have seen on the previous slide, and also how to apply the principle. The other texts that we see for this and other principles are not in the exam syllabus. So here we have 5 points related to applying the principles, and the fifth one is in the center, leverage AI. So let's look at all of these. At the top left, we have how or know how consumers use each service. And we have seen this on the left also, who is the service consumer, and understand why and how they use the service. And how does it help them? Then encourage a focus on value among all staff. All employees from the provider side need to understand the concept of focus on value. Let's say I am expecting a parcel through a courier delivery, and let's say I've not received it as expected on time. I might call them to check what happened. The provider should not tell me something about their process or workflow that we are currently doing, noting it, the status, it has left our hub, it's going there, it's on the way. Rather, we have to know by when we can expect it. So if that person had focused on value, his or her response to the user or customer would have been slightly different. So this is how all staff need to be trained on the focus on value, rather than focus on other things like how is the process and how is the technology and so on. Then we have at the bottom left, focus on value during operational activity as well as during improvement initiatives. People might think that value is needed only during improvements, but it is important to continuously create value during their day-to-day operation. Operations should not be taken for granted, because if that's the case, then there can be value leakage during operations, and then the value has to be restored to the expected value. For example, a user trying to download a document for some work from a website, and if they are not able to do it due to some reason, they might call up the service desk and to receive some support. And they would be expecting that they should be able to download the document as soon as possible as part of day-to-day work. And then we have include a focus on value in every step of any improvement initiative. Now, improvements may be decided based on their value, no doubt, with a justification and funding. But every step of the improvement should also be justified for its value. So, for example, if there's a training program for employees and it might have an elaborate plan, and every step of that plan or every activity in the plan should be checked whether that will help to add or create value. So, for example, it could be that there's a list of trainings to be mandated for employees. Is it really necessary to mandate each item there? Is it really valuable for everybody? Or could we eliminate some of those? So that can be an example. Then in the center, we have leverage AI. AI, as you know, is quite useful. It is now known to many people, not just technical people anymore. And so AI can be used for focus on value to understand, for example, what do stakeholders perceive as valuable? What are their expectations? What are their concerns? These can be understood better using AI in a faster manner.